Well, hello everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa with me, Chantelle, your very croaky hostess today. Well, as you all know, who've been on this journey with us for the past month, it's been quite daunting. We've done our yoga celebration 3 weeks, and then we're currently in the middle of a 3-day water fast. Today is day 2. So I've been having a massive detox, which is amazing. Body doesn't always like it though, but it's definitely for the better. So, but I'm very, very happy to be here with you guys again tonight. And of course, with our favorite Italian, Leo Zagami, who I'm going to bring on in a minute. But yeah, just to let you guys know, we're actually streaming live on Rumble nowadays as well. We've managed to link Rumble to the live shows. So, and of course, Rumble is a lot more forgiving when it comes to YouTube and stuff like that as well. And of course, as you know, we have been talking about Leo starting a book club with us here on ARA, Aquarius Rising Africa, for the ARA tribe. That'll be for members and Patreons. In fact, I'm not even going to talk to you about it. I'm going to let him tell you what we have planned for that. So, ta-da, Mr. Zagami, welcome.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, Chantelle. And yes, it's a book club that is going to start in early May. It's a project that is going to bring you through the whole series of Illuminati Confessions, but we're going to start backwards. So we're going to start with the newest one, which is not yet out. It's going to be published hopefully at the end of April, and it's volume 12. And from that moment, we're going to go from volume 12, volume 11, volume 10. It's going to be a countdown. And we're going to make, of course, the willing participants not only knowledgeable, but they will be able to interact with me, ask questions about these books. So it's going to be, of course, essential to purchase the books in the first place if you want to know what you're talking about. I mean, it's going to be definitely an interesting book club. And like I said, it's going to last probably a year, because 12 books means 12 months.
Yes.
And that's going to be a whole year of a book club with Leo and Chantelle. So this is the introduction that I think was summarizing our project.
Well, you see, I want to tell you, I told you guys we're bringing you some cool stuff. And really, this is amazing. So when, and Leo, of course, is going to be launching his new book on the show for our viewers as well, and then you guys can get a copy of it. And really, the whole objective is to get the book, read it during the month, and then we'll have, not only will we have one interview like we have now with Leo, but then we'll also do the book club, which will be via the membership and the Patreon channels as well, where you then read the book. And then we will gather once a month and talk about the book, and any questions or anything you have, Leo will be there to answer your questions.
I mean, it's going to be a much more in-depth, we're going to go through all the chapters. And so it's going to be definitely a more in-depth view of a book than the ones that I currently offer when I do interviews. So, I mean, we're going to have this opportunity, of course, with Chantelle, and I'm glad that she came up with this idea. I think that it's part of her solutions, as we see also
exactly.
Green solution. So here we have, of course, a topic which I have discussed essentially in an article which I sent you. It is being published on leozagami.com. It's an important topic because, as you know, I'm a native European. I'm no longer a European citizen by choice, because I knew that Europe was descending into some kind of Orwellian path, which I didn't want to embrace in any form or shape. For people also, it's important to understand this connection with the Bilderberg, because they always hear about this Bilderberg group, Bilderberg meeting, Bilderberg this and that, but they don't really understand what the Bilderberg is really about, apart from being an elitist group. Now, in this article, I also explained that this year we're going to have the Bilderberg's meeting in Sweden. Sweden, because is the not only, of course, a particular place that has recently joined NATO after being neutral even during the Second World War. But Sweden, because in Stockholm, where this meeting is going to take place, there is the headquarters of the Swedish Rite of Freemasonry, which itself dominates the whole of Scandinavia. What does that mean? There is a lot of discussion, for example, these days about Greenland, and Trump wanting Greenland for America. Greenland, though, is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. That's another part of this Swedish network. The Swedish Rite of Freemasonry is very particular, Chantelle, because on the contrary of the rest of Freemasonry, it has retained, at least that's what they say or they claim, a Christian identity. So they forbid any other religion from entering their lodges. You have to be a Christian. Right. What does it mean, though? Does it mean that once you go inside, you're going to find a Christian environment? Well, that's not really the case. As you know, I lived many years in Scandinavia, in Norway in particular, and I noticed, though, also the very specific identity of this rite, that it's not just like the forms of Freemasonry that we have here in the United States or around the world. This is a kind of almost like a state Freemasonry. Like, for example, in Norway, we have the parliament, and on the other side of the road, the Masonic quarters with secret passages going underground and stuff. So Jens Stoltenberg, who, as you know, used to be the Secretary General of NATO, has accepted at the end of 2024 the leadership, almost, let's say, of the Bilderberg group. So he has moved on from being the Secretary General of NATO to being instead one of the big shots in the Bilderberg Club. And for that reason, I think the Bilderberg is meeting, of course, in Scandinavia and in Stockholm in particular, which is the capital of Sweden, where, like I said, it's not... You see, the Swedish Rite, that is called the Swedish Rite because it's Sweden, the most powerful country within Scandinavia that dominates, Masonically speaking, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Finland. Now, these countries have a very particular role at the moment in this new Cold War scenario, which is, as you know, this new Cold War scenario sees countries like Norway actually bordering with Russia. So they have a specific role, let's say, in this situation, which by no means is de-escalating. Trump and Putin have tried to de-escalate the whole thing. But you see, Europe instead is actually bringing on a emergency kit. That's why today I wanted to show a video file of what Europe is proposing in the emergency kit. I'm going to bring it up and we will show it to our viewers. Okay, Chantelle, check it out.
Okay, let me add it.
Welcome to What's in My Bag Survival Edition. First up, my glasses. Super important if you want to see what is happening or not. Next, my document in waterproof pouch, a must in a rainy Brussels. Now, let's talk about lighting. I have a flashlight. If you don't forget the matches and, of course, the light. Sure. And water, of course, because water is life. And my special friend, a Swiss Army knife, 18 tools in only one knife, a must-have. And don't forget your medication. You might need it, because you never know. And don't forget something to eat. You might be hungry, very hungry. And of course, some cash. In the middle of a crisis, cash is king. And your credit card might just be a piece of plastic, a charger, and a power bank, because a dead end is a dead end. Playing cards instead of distraction never hurt anyone. And don't forget the radio, the smaller one. This is everything you need to survive the first 72 hours of a crisis. Speaking about being prepared, the EU is preparing its strategy to be sure that every citizen is safe in case of crisis. Be prepared, be safe.
Here we are really resembling one of, what is this? Some kind of comedy? I mean, it's ridiculous to think that the EU wants to prepare the citizen with a video message like this. I mean, Russia and Vladimir Putin must be laughing their asses off when they see this kind of situation. I mean, this is why Europe is going to end up in a very bad place. Now, today I want to recommend for most people who are viewing us to at least, if the Europeans, have a plan B, because Europe is going to become a hell zone soon. And it's not going to be a joke. When they have launched this request for an emergency kit on Wednesday, I was a little bit skeptic at the beginning. You know, say, are these people really serious about what they are proposing here? But they are. That's the problem. And you see, the members of the EU Commission, as well as the rest of the EU technocrats, are a product of the Bilderberg Club, which is itself a Jesuit product. It is a product of post-Cold War, because during the Cold War, they had a reason, you know, this Atlanticism that was merging together and that was being promoted in the Bilderberg Club since 1954 from the first meeting was, of course, anti-communist. After the end of the Cold War, though, it became the completely different situation in which liberalism, leftist values started to take over, and also suddenly the idea of freedom that we have here in America, we cherish here in America, was not regarded as important as their own project, their own European project with these alleged European values. Now, only recently we saw, I think it was a week ago, an organization that doesn't need to be confused with the World Economic Forum, met in Berlin, headed by special guests Bill and Hillary Clinton. That was really the epitome of this Fourth Reich rising. So the situation for both the EU as well as Great Britain is very, very bad at the moment. And so I suggest for our friends who are viewing us from these places to at least have a plan B outside of the EU, outside of Great Britain. Now, the hard left has infiltrated Western institutions because the hard left is in reality a Jesuit reality, a Jesuit creation. It's part of this new world order which uses the Illuminati and the Freemasons as their agents. That's why people like Jens Stoltenberg from Norway are gonna head in the middle of June a special meeting of the Bilderberg dedicated to this upcoming emergency scenario. You see, we wanted to hear from America peace for Europe, but they don't have any intention of doing peace, because Europe feels still they can have a role on the world, on the global scenario. You see, the great actors on the world scenario of this new world order or disorder, depending on how you view it, are America, China, and Russia. Europe doesn't stand a chance. It's like Africa. Africa, of course, it's also there with the Democratic Republic of Congo now asking help from Trump after having worked with the Jesuits for years in trying to ask help from Europe, which never arrived. The the actual situation is this: Europe is an American protectorate. If it refuses that identity, it will inevitably fall under China, which is already creeping in and buying everything. So there is no European rearmament or defending the European values. Either you embrace the American values of freedom, true freedom, either you fall for a more oppressive Orwellian scenario in which, of course, censorship has increased in the last 10 years. And the situation is becoming, most countries within Western Europe, but also the ones that have embraced the EU from the former Eastern Europe, will see their, let's say, their identity completely changed if they continue embracing this neo-Marxist agenda. Now, they really don't understand what is happening because they have been formed and shaped in schools and universities that have given them the illusion that, Europe is safe. We face the whole world and we are ourselves a great power. Now, let me remind you that this Europe is really the Franco-German alliance from the very beginning. And of course, I tried to explain also in my article what it means. But there is also to say, Islam, for example, Islam in the Western world is defended as a cherished minority that we need to protect in every institution because they are the immigrants who are coming to our countries in peace. Guys, Islam is an oppressive ideology, a religion that oppresses people, that wants to eliminate every single other religion on the planet and be the only ones. So, to have already that kind of step.
It's happening a lot at the moment. It's happening a lot here. When you're looking, even in South Africa, on huge highways in Johannesburg, like they've got these billboards and they are advertising Islam propaganda, whatever, on there. And it's really, you can see that it's being pushed a lot. Someone was saying to me the other day, it's happening a lot in Scotland as well, where there's a lot of that going on in the schools. There's a lot of recruiting.
Okay, Scotland is part of Great Britain that though wants to join the EU. I'm Scottish, partly Scottish, but I don't recognize anymore this land. It's been completely brainwashed left, right, and center. It has become, sadly, a Jesuit stronghold. And this, of course, it's also part of what is happening here. We are seeing Scotland embracing EU values rather than Brexit values. I think that the Scottish people need to realize that if they want to see, to go from London to Brussels, they're not going to get anything better. It's going to be like falling from one thing to a worse thing. It's not like they're going to gain independence or they're going to gain anything positive. Do the Scottish people want to be ruled by Berlin and Paris or by London? If we want to stand by our tradition, our history, guys, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about the sovereignty of the countries. But regarding the strategy of tension that is, of course, being implemented here by the EU, because it's also a strategy of tension, this creation of an emergency kit of saying to everybody in Europe, we have to have preparedness against all kinds of disasters, being cybercrime, armed conflict, or anything else. But they also have this message of prepare but don't panic, that is delivered by a stupid politician like the one we have seen in the video, which is basically ridiculous, because either you deliver a message in a serious way and you say to people, prepare because we are going to war and you need this emergency kit, or otherwise to deliver a half-ass message like this one is just ridiculous, and it makes the EU look like a bunch of fools that they really are. Now, they could have embraced Trump's plan. There would have been, of course, let's say, loss of territory from Ukraine that is not even part of the EU. So who cares? Do you want to really have Putin marching on Poland or marching on other parts of Europe? No, just give him that Ukraine we don't give a damn about, because the alternative is a full-on conflict with Russia. And of course, they are, calculating, are we going to win this conflict? Are we not? Without America, Europe is in the hands of professional military, which are, first of all, very few in number. They are also, yes, skilled, but they don't have the numbers that Russia has. I mean, you can send, of course, a peacekeeper force, Franco English peacekeeping force to the borders. What is going to be? 30,000, 50,000? The Russians are going to arrive with 1 million soldiers. They're going to kick your asses. They're going to eat your brains out. So the reality of it all is that, for example, Great Britain has 75,000 soldiers. Of those 75,000 soldiers, 35,000 are cooks, drivers, chefs. And so you have 35,000 to fight the war with in front of 1 million soldiers in Russia. You better just shut up, because at the end of the day, that's the solution. And now we have Northern Korea sending another 3,000 soldiers to Ukraine in the last few days. That means that an eventual war, and in all this, we have the silent participation of China, which might go from being silent to being less silent, which at that point will be the end, because they can march with 1 billion soldiers, and then that's it. I mean, you see, Europeans need to be realistic, but the problem has been, unfortunately, for both the Europeans and for Great Britain, which used to be, and we can consider part of Europe, even if not formally, is the education in their schools that gave them the false illusion that after the Second World War, certain things, will be, never repeated again.
Right, now, exactly.
Now that they have facing a real bloodbath, what are they going to do? Are they going to continue with all the propaganda against Putin? Putin is bad, Putin is bad, Putin is... let me remind you, America has 5,000 and more nuclear weapons. The same, Russia has even more, even a couple of few hundred or maybe even thousands more. They are definitely have as much as the United States and a little bit more. We're talking about nuclear weapons that can destroy this planet over and over and over again. France has a few hundred, a couple of 200, 300, whatever, and they want to offer their nuclear umbrella because they think that at the end of the day, if they continue in this ridiculous war, they can maybe, they can avoid the nuclear threat because nobody wants the nuclear threat. So don't worry about it. Let's continue with the war. But if a war is made also on numbers of soldiers dead, and we saw it in Ukraine, how many people died on both, both the Russian as well as the Ukrainian side. Europe doesn't have these numbers. And the moment they start calling in the population between 18 to 45 years old in countries that have absolutely no idea. I mean, Italy used to have a military service. I was in the military for a year. I at least know how to use weapons and stuff. But the new generations, no. Because at one point, of course, the draft was eliminated. And so now it's all professionals. But those professionals are not enough to defend Europe. And yes, you have countries that still have the draft, that still have a year of military, like Norway on the border. I must say, very prepared, good weapons, good preparedness. I saw them with my own eyes, very professional. But having said that, still the numbers are, Norway, it's like nothing.
I want to find out from you what your take on Sweden is. You mentioned Sweden earlier on, and there's actually a viewer who sends me a lot of information on Sweden, and she lives there, and I've got my own stuff on Sweden and kind of been digging, and Sweden ain't pretty. That's for sure.
No, because the problem has been that in the last few years, the younger generations are mostly Islamic, Muslim. They have taken over they have taken entire parts of cities in Sweden, which are almost ruled by the Sharia. I don't think that those kind of people will be trusted soldiers for an eventual war, because I will not be able to trust those kind of people. I'm sorry. I know what kind of mentality they have. They came into Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, and other parts of Scandinavia simply as economic migrants to make money. If they see a war, they're going to go back to their countries in a second. They're not going to be fighting for Sweden. Their national identity has been forced upon them. Of course.
But why do you think? Do you think that, for example, sorry to interrupt you, but do you think, if you're saying that these migrants went and kind of obviously settled in with the locals there, but now when the poo's going to hit the fan, everyone runs home again. Why do you think they were allowed in there then? Why do you think they were adopted so strongly into the culture, into the countries? Do you think that was part of the strategy from, let's say, Europe to get these guys on their side? How? I'm trying to understand the mentality behind this. Why are they doing that?
When it comes to Great Britain, it's different because, like I explained in volume 10 of my Confessions, which is a book which I highly suggest to people who want to understand Islam, because it is a book where I discuss Islamic Freemasonry topics that are not really well known. How we have the present crisis, the eternal crisis in the Middle East. Islam is not one Islam, it's made of many realities. And I try to really depict them all in volume 10 of my Confessions. But I also explain in volume 10 of my Confession that, for example, the migrants that went to Great Britain immediately after the Second World War were brought in from the countries of the former, at that point, British Empire, because it was dissolving, so they could help into the reconstruction. Because I was, I'm half British. I grown up partly in London. I remember London still bombed in the 1970s. There were parts of London that were completely destroyed by the Germans. So imagine that. So in the 50s, they called in millions of Muslims. And now, of course, they have overrun the countries, and they basically, every single mayor in every single city in England is actually Muslim, and the rest of Great Britain is not much better. But in regards to Europe, we have France, of course, which also had vast presence as a colonial power into Muslim countries that, of course, also at that point, like Algeria, but many others, not only Algeria, arrived in France. And Freemasonry was part of this situation. That's why I pointed on volume 10, because there is a connection with Freemasonry here. Freemasonry has the intention after the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason, as they call it, is to basically destroy the Judeo-Christian basis of Europe, identity of Europe. And of course, this influx of Muslim migrants meant, that Christians will get weaker and weaker. And actually, Christianity is already weak in Europe because it's lived in a way that is not like the Muslims live their own religion. They live their own religion, 5 times a day. They have practice that are very, very rigid. They have a discipline. The Christians in Europe, they don't even go to mass. Maybe the ones that go to mass maybe once or twice a year in countries like Italy when it's like the festivities because they're Catholic. Countries like France had the French Revolution, which changed everything in the way religion and state were, not only separated, but they became like, so I think that France has demonstrated with hundreds, if not thousands, of attacks on churches in the last 15 years that there is an attack on Christianity. And who did those attacks? Preventively Muslims. Muslims entered the churches, set them on fire, destroyed the altars. This is what happened. So the integration in France didn't really work out. And they thought that Freemasonry could be that element that could bring all these, Muslims, Christians, and all other religions, Jews or Hindu, all in one lodge. And it actually, in England, when they started to have problems, Freemasonry managed to bring that kind of balance and right. and avoid the civil insurrection. France is different because the form of Freemasonry, first of all, is different. The prevailing form of Freemasonry is an atheist form of Freemasonry, which is the Grand Orient of France. So it's different.
What is the Grand Orient of France? How does that differ from the other brotherhoods?
Because in the 1870s, they stopped requiring the belief in God in their lodges. That led to a more leftist, progressive, socialist form of Freemasonry, which is known as liberal Freemasonry. And at that point, the values that the first Freemasons had instigated, let's say, or endorsed, which came together in what is known as the Anderson Constitutions, were no longer respected. Freemasonry originally was actually Christian, but then opened up to other religions in 1813 with the unification of the modern and the ancients in England. And at that point, it became also a way, like I just said, to bring different religions to the table in an expanding empire, which had many religions. Great Britain had, the British Empire was enormous. And so there were different religions and different religions that could be brought together only in a lodge, not in a church. So this is what happened. In places like though Germany and Northern Europe, there is another reality, which is a hidden racist reality of Freemasons who are racist because they don't embrace other religions. They prohibit other religions to join those. Not every obedience in Germany. There's the United Lodges of Germany, but one specific obedience. And in Scandinavia, like I said, all the prevailing Masonic obediences adopts the Swedish Rite. That is only for Christians. What does it mean? It means that, for example, yes, they let in countries like Sweden or Norway or other countries a lot of Muslims, but they don't ever have real power because they don't let them into the lodges of Freemasonry. So, which in those countries don't have only a social value, but also a political value. So I think that it's very important to understand that Freemasonry is not a unified structure. There is various realities, no? And just mentioning... now I mentioned the Grand Orient, then I mentioned instead obediences which have a completely different structure and are just for Christians, or the ones that accept every religion under the great architect of universe, which is supposed to be God. But let's not forget that in reality, all these structures were infiltrated, and the Vatican Jesuits were the ones who managed to lead, one against the other, so they could then be the ones that control, because ultimately, from the moment Protestantism started to rise, the Catholic Church went on the offensive, and they went on the offensive with the Jesuits. But going back to what is happening in Europe, and Europe is completely different from America these days, because, like I said, if after the Second World War, there was almost the illusion that America was being built on the same American values. It wasn't. The American Constitution tells you that you can have weapons. The European constitutions, no, don't do that. I mean, there is not the First Amendment. There is not even the Second Amendment, of course, because the weapon thing is. But the First Amendment was still something that the Europeans thought could be embraced. The value of free speech, the value, Europeans said, no, we defend liberty. And still nowadays, if you go to ask those idiots in Brussels, we are defending liberty. Yes, but we do it in a way that you can't post this on your social network. Otherwise, we're going to come to your house like the Gestapo in the middle of the night. It's not really,
right.
It's not coherent. So the EU says that now we have to prepare, and of course Germany, which is at the center of has released a 68-page document detailing what civilians should do in case of nuclear emergencies and all that. We saw earlier in the show the EU Crisis Management Commissioner Aja Lahib, which seems like an idiot who is, what is that? I mean, you have to understand, this is a world which is gonna be made by strong people, because when you are, in a reality fighting with Russia or China and the new Sino-Russian alliance, which is is basically the new world order, is made by Russia and China these days. America is trying to not let that happen. But then when Trump does these things, in places like Canada, they depict him as a monster. Oh, he wants to take over a country. Oh, Greenland. And the people in Greenland, J.D. Vance is not welcome. Now, let me explain to all the idiots who are watching us, because, of course, they haven't studied history, if they embrace the idea that we can continue as we are, ceding more and more to China each day. Now, okay, you want to continue this way, Europe? You want to have Greenland the way it is? The reality is this. China and Russia don't give a damn of your rules. So if you are not strong as Trump is trying to do, even if it's difficult in this country, because of course you have the deep state, you have all the Jesuit Democrats, because the Democrats are basically the political arm of the Jesuits, that are mass deportations, gangsters that are brought in El Salvador. We have to humanly treat these guys, poor people. What the heck are you talking about? So these people, the understanding of the normal folk today, if you talk with a Canadian, he will tell you, Trump is a fascist. He wants to take over our country. Idiots, your country has been already taken over. During the pandemic, as I explained in volume 11, NATO ran an experiment on the minds of the Canadians so they could be brainwashed and not oppose in any way what was, they had a lot of restrictions. And the same, and
Canada was very hard hit with that, right? That whole brainwashing thing.
Unfortunately, Canada though, only a few years ago, well, it was 5, 6, was actually doing joint war games with China. Greenland is ceding more and more. China is creeping into Greenland, and they are silent. The Chinese, they don't make Panama. They were already taking control of the, if you don't have, I mean, the thing is, in the future, there will not be the same sovereignty as the one we have today. If you are a small country, don't expect to be left alone. Either you join the big powers, or either you will be eaten alive. So this is the same for South Africa, the same for any other country. And at that point, are you more willing to be ate alive by the United States of America, which at least is going to permit you to have a certain degree of freedom? Or do you want to join communist China? Because that's a possibility. And it's actually the only possibility, the only alternative. So you, at that point, have to understand what to do. You can't just say, oh, I want to stay. Greenland is an independent country. No, first of all, Greenland is under the kingdom of Denmark, and it's been for hundreds of years. So you've never been independent. You depend from a king who is in Denmark, which is miles away from Greenland. Okay? And at the same time, you depend from, imagine this, in Greenland, they don't have Freemasonry because the decisions are made in Copenhagen. In Iceland, they actually have a Grand Lodge. I've been there. I know, I mean, these are places which I actually visited. I used to work there. So I have a direct experience. Most people have never been in these places, so they don't have an experience. I have been, and I know what's going on. So I can tell you also, the problem with Scandinavia is they have been brainwashed by socialism in a way which is like, I mean, it's like the women have all the rights, the men have no balls, and the countries are just ridiculously run. And of course, in the case of a war, things will change, because you can be feminist as much as you want until they start shooting outside your door. Because then I don't know if women have the same kind of...
I agree. I definitely agree, Leo. I agree. I think there are certain roles that men are much more qualified to handle, and there are certain roles that women are much more qualified to handle. And I agree that the job of war belongs to men. I really do. I think women should not be in that place. I think when it comes to that sort of stuff, that's where men are better. That's my opinion. I don't think it's in a woman's makeup to be, even shouldn't be our part of what we do. And I'm not saying if we have to defend ourselves and our children, oh boy, you're not going to find a woman who's more like a lioness, for sure. But when it comes out, when it actually goes out and it's strategizing war, and that's not a woman's. There's a certain thing that woman, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be a feminine influence or something like that, but I definitely feel that the balance, men are equipped to be genetically in their DNA to be in a certain way, as are women. And I think that has been lost in so many instances. And I'm not even just talking about this transgenderism stuff now. That's just a byproduct of all of this other stuff. But I think there are certain roles. I'm traditional in that way. I think I had a very strong masculine father, and I had a very strong feminine mother who was a very strong family unit. And my father was a very good provider, in that way. So I see the value in that. I see the value in them coming together, right? The different, and that I think is what we've lost. Really, as I'm sitting here saying this, I think half this problem is that, and hey, there's no one more independent than me as a woman, most definitely. But I understand as well, there are certain values when when it comes to being in a certain way, certain roles we take, always there has to be that balance when certain things need to play themselves out. And over time, I think this whole thing about women suddenly needing to do this and breaking balls and what have you, and swinging that pendulum from one side, society is a mess. No one knows where they are anymore. you know. And I think, and that's why I really think that this is, once the dust settles, I think everything just needs to settle. People just need to not be, the world is in chaos right now. So when we start just calming down, right? And I don't know.
But the problem here is, let's go back to the strategy of tension. They don't want you to calm down.
I was about to say that, yeah. I was about to say the strategy of tension. That's, for me, is what all of this has been about as well, because I was fascinated, and I hope you guys saw that link I put up earlier on. I'm going to find it here again in the chat. Maybe one of the mods can do it, of Leo's article, which is super interesting.
I would like to briefly introduce the article. The actual word strategy of tension, because you see, I grew up in Italy, and I grew up in Italy in the 1970s, early 80s. I was a witness to what happened. I mean, it wasn't something that didn't touch you directly. You will have, tanks at the entrance of the highway. You will have people with machine guns coming to your door for nothing. It was hell. It was really real tension, because what happened was, as I explained in my article, the original strategy of tension was outlined in a document that was actually that came to light in October 1974. And it was sent to Lisbon by this correspondence of this press agency, which in reality was a cover-up for an international anti-communist mercenary unit led by the CIA. And all those terrorist groups that were so active in that period in Italy, in Europe, they were all part of this game. Politics was used, so you had, but was used in a way that was very ugly. So you had the Red Brigades, the Black Brigades, the fascists, the communists fighting in the streets, fighting, and everybody believed in this bullshit, when in reality, they were all piloted by the same center that was using the old trick of dividi et impera, which of course goes back to the ancient Romans and Julius Caesar, divide and conquer. So you divide all these people and you can conquer them in a way. So the strategy of tension led to what was known as the years of lead meaning the bullets in the guns. And like I said, it was a real thing. At one point, I remember the police broke through the door of my house and they accused my father of being the head of the Red Brigades, which was something completely demented. And it was only because of the political enemies of my grandfather that they did that. But the way they broke in and the way and it was just, and my father got the hint that they were about to do it. So we had to hide every single weapon in the house and stuff. It was just nightmare. I mean, those years they're part of who I am today. So I understand real things that other people just have read in the books. So for me, the strategy of tension was the way they could control a whole country. And they could control this whole country by at times blaming this or this other group. Like, for example, suddenly you will have an explosion that will kill 100 people in a train station and they will blame it on the fascists. In reality, it was the Stay Behind Gladio group and the CIA and P2 Lodge that put together,
The third force. Always called a third force. There's always a third force involved who does these things. It's never the ones that are blamed, actually. It's crazy.
No, but they were always blaming because, of course, by blaming, they will encourage people to be more angry. And you will then see it in the streets, the anger, So now they have brought up since then, since the end of the strategy of tension, fortunately, at one point it ended. It ended because then we had the end of the Cold War, we had the end of the Soviet Union. So all that structure of stay behind operations was kind of, that was known also as Gladio in Italy, was kind of dismantled. But what happened after that? They said, okay, the threat of communism now doesn't exist anymore. The problem was that, unfortunately, at that point in the universities, in the schools and the stuff, all those people who somehow had embraced those leftist values, they didn't have any limits anymore. So they could embrace them fully. And those Europeans who were actually pro-American were brainwashed to become more and more anti-American in those universities at a time where, were being financed even by institutions like USAID. So that's why Trump has dismantled USAID as well as dismantled the Department of Education. The Department of Education here in America is no more than an arm of these Jesuit leftist values that brainwashes people to believe in all their bullshit and their woke lies and ideology. So why should we spend money for a Department of Education? It's not a department, it's a department of brainwashing. So that's it.
So true. So true.
In Europe, the universities, still to this day in Italy, you cannot become the head of a university if you don't have the actual, if you are not part of the Democratic or the leftist party. That is, you have to actually have evidence of it, and you can become the head rector of the university. You cannot even become a professor in a university in Italy if you are not left-wing. So this means that the produce of it all is a bunch of degenerate fools who will not be able to fight the Russians. They will not be able to fight anybody. They cannot even shoot a water pistol. So this kind of people, Russia is laughing. Say, bring it on. Bring it on.
The water pistol.
No, I mean, imagine the Russians. I mean, I've been in Russia. I think that I'm a person who has been in Russia probably over 30 times. So I know Russia like I know my pockets. I work for the ministry. I know the Russians. Russians are serious people, man. You don't joke with those people. I remember going even to do a night out, and there would be machine guns at the door like that. And there would be, I mean, it's very serious country. You don't want to joke with this kind of, I mean, intellectually very deep, understanding also communism, because they lived communism. So they know exactly what are the limits of communism. Instead, the Europeans have this kind of ideological love for the, they think that by embracing these leftist socialist values, they are in the right, and ethically and morally they are superior. Let's embrace the whole of Africa and welcome it into Europe. Yes, let's destroy the whole structure of countries and populations that have been there for thousands of years, just as the Africans. Because when you're talking about Europe, you're not talking about America. It's a completely different ballgame.
I agree. It is, but the thing
Italians have been Italians for thousands of years. French have been French for thousands of years. Germans have been Germans, unfortunately, for thousands of years. So to try to destroy the structure, social structure, by bringing in millions of people who don't share your values, who don't share, and of course, this paradox of an alliance between the left and Islam. I mean, it's like left and Islam. How can you? Sooner or later, this alliance is not going to work out because they are completely at the opposite. One is going to throw the gay off the roof. The other one wants to embrace him and give him an identity. It's not going to work out. So the problem here, when it comes down to the strategy of tension, is simply being used at the moment, including this whole thing of the emergency kit, because they want to build Europe military. they want to become independent from America. Now that America said, we're not going to be paying for your military bills anymore. You're going to have to do it on yourself. They don't know how to justify that with their population. So suddenly they make their population part of some kind of emergency, and Putin is the big enemy. And so we need to all arm ourselves. Apart from the fact that a lot of this money that they allegedly gonna give to, to reconstruct the military identity of Europe again, is also gonna be covering all the economic disasters of the past, including what has happened during the pandemic. Because you see, in my article, as you have read, Chantelle, I said one thing that I'm sure you agree. They went from one emergency to another, but they said that they were embracing the Great Reset openly in the European Parliament.
Yes, absolutely.
They need something. They don't have the pandemic anymore. They went immediately on to the next crisis. And the people of Europe didn't have the time to relax. Like you said, we need to relax, meditate about it.
Gosh, there's just one thing after the other, and it really is this strategy of tension. And I love the way, and that's why I want to encourage people to read your article, because I love the way you actually explain that in the beginning, because it truly is what they do, is they create the strategy of tension, and it's like going in from one scenario to the other. And of course, the most recent one that we had, of course, was, well, even before the COVID, there was a lot of stuff happening before the COVID, the 9/11 shenanigans, all of that. It's been this one huge fear operation after the other.
Yeah, I mean, 9/11 has been the beginning of this strategy of tension on a global level. You see, what has happened is we went from an experiment in Europe, mainly, unfortunately, on the Italian population, conducted by the CIA, because the CIA at the time had their headquarters in the American embassy in Rome. So the experiment was more easily conducted in Italy, out of all countries. So, and then once they experimented everything, they even killed the prime minister with their bullshit and all the rest. At that point, the experiment worked out. Let's try it on a massive scale. And that was 9/11. Right. That was 9/11. And actually, as you know, I discussed this in volume 11 of my Confessions, because it's part of mind control. It's a giant psyop. And it's really what is happening in Europe. Now, the solution, though, for the Europeans, we have a lot of viewers from Europe who at the moment will simply say, oh, well, I want to stay in my country. I pay my taxes in my country. I want to help my country. I'm sorry to break it to you guys. Your country doesn't exist anymore. And it hasn't existed anymore since they have printed the euro. And if you are embraced the euro, you have no longer a sovereign coin, you don't have a way to get out of it, because it's in Germany that the future of the euro is decided, not in your own country. And it's only two countries that decide the future of Europe, France and Germany. The rest is just people talking, pretending to be embracing some form of democracy. But as soon as Romania tried to elect somebody who actually wanted something different with Russia, what did they do, Chantelle? They immediately broke into his house, tried to arrest him. Georgescu can't participate to the elections, and the elections have to be redone because suddenly there is a fraud, there is something to do with Russia and all bullshit. So Romania has demonstrated the end of even a resemblance of democracy.
Exactly.
So now that the resemblance of democracy has ended, and you see their true colors, you see those idiots like the ones we showed at the beginning of the show who are talking about the emergency kit, like they are talking, let's go to war with Russia. Now, the fact that there is not going to be a nuclear war between Russia and America, that's okay. But the fact that a nuclear weapon is going to be used on Europe, well, that's not something that we can guarantee. Actually, there is going to be a nuclear bomb in Europe detonated within the next 10 years. And that is going to change everything, because the moment, the Europeans will be like, oh, and now what are we going to do? The moment that they understand that they have to send their sons, who don't know even if they're men or women or whatever, who have a lot of psychological problems after the pandemic, so they are kind of like, oh, we have to help them and all that. In the meantime, the war
it's crazy.
In the battlefield is always the same. Europe has been the battlefield for the First World War. It's the battlefield for it was the battlefield for the Second World War, and it's going to be the battlefield for the Third World War. So in the end, it would be much better if they could simply, the Europeans could say, okay, sorry to America, continue to protect us against Russia and China, and we embrace your values of freedom, including the Second Amendment. We, of course, don't embrace the first one because we are half-wits, but that's okay. But in any embrace the First Amendment, not the second one, because they don't want to wear it. But in any case, I think that that would be a solution if they simply said, okay, we don't have the actual technical means and the people and the weapons to be on our own. Europe is a protectorate of the United States of America. There's nothing, to be ashamed of it. I mean, you're simply the way you are. If Europe continues to elude themselves, we can be as strong as America, as Russia, as China. Guys, it's a joke. 500 million people in Europe, most of them are old. Most of them are the values that they have promoted since the 70s have castrated Europe, so they didn't really produce many children. They are just getting immigrants in their countries. Those immigrants, like we said earlier, will not fight for your values. They will not fight for your country.
Yeah, exactly.
They will simply take a plane and go back from where they come, and they will laugh at you while they're doing it. Say, fight on your own for your country.
Yeah, so, I agree. It's actually pretty sad. It's actually pretty sad in terms of this whole breakdown. Systematic. It's been a systematic breakdown as these creatures of the night, as I call them, have gotten more and more entrenched. So, what do you think, Leo? I mean, from what you're saying, the future for Europe especially looks pretty grim. I mean, what is the solution? Is there a solution for Europe from where you're sitting?
Well, like I just said, the solution would be simply to, to realize that they can't do it on their own, like they didn't really do it on their own after the Second World War. They were occupied by America has built in Europe a number of bases, has actually helped Europe militarily to resist Russia, and they will, of course, help resisting China. But if they don't want that anymore, Europe doesn't have the means to resist either Russia, China, or anybody else. And Europe at that point is going to exchange one certainty for a big uncertainty, because if they think that they can, resist this insidious work that is laboriously done by the little Chinese that come to your door and say, I want to buy your bar, I want to buy your restaurant, I want to buy your shop. They're not coming there with machine guns, Sorry.
Exactly. It's a complete different takeover. Before you know it, there's six of your neighbors are Chinese, and nothing against the Chinese,
Yeah. And suddenly, it's like I went back to Rome in 2008. I haven't been living in Rome for 15 years. So it was a long time since I left Rome when I went back there. But the first thing I realized was there was an increased presence of Chinese. But just in the matter of time since I went back and since I left, they had already taken over all of the area which I was living in, and more. So it's like, I'm not, you know what? I actually get very much along with Chinese people because they are very straight to the point. But the problem is, you cannot give up your whole culture, your tradition, your homes, your businesses to the Chinese because they're going to take them. They're going to laugh and they're going to take them. But I mean, it's not towards the Chinese. I have a great respect for Chinese culture. I know that Chinese culture has, in a way, helped us through the Enlightenment because during the Age of Reason, there was a lot of China that was coming through thanks to the Jesuits. Not the other way around, though. It was like we were not really capable of convincing the Chinese to embrace a lot of our things until, though, they realized that, for example, when it comes to science, it was an essential value. And that's why after the 1950s, they started their own arms race that brought them to become a nuclear power. You see, when Mao Zedong, after this long march, became in charge of China, China wasn't a nuclear power. So until they became a nuclear power, they were not really a threat to the rest of the world. That's not the case now. They are not at the level, of course, of China, of America or Russia, but China is building an arsenal, and because they are so dedicated, by 2030 they will have reached both Russia and America. And the problem here is now, going back to Greenland, going back to Canada, and all our friends who are listening and viewing us from these countries and saying, Leo Zagami is a fascist, Leo Zagami is and all that. Okay, let me explain you a little bit. No, because otherwise I get misunderstood. Do you want to be with America or do you want to be with China and Russia? That's it. The values, you know what we guarantee. You know what they guarantee on the other side. There is no staying independent because they're not going to make you stay independent. So that's why Trump is urging, literally, Greenland or Canada to join in, because the alternative is that they become part of China. And if that happens, well, you know what kind of freedom you have in China.
Interesting question here, there, Leo. And that's actually what I was thinking about earlier on. Why is China still listed as a developing country?
Because the leftists in this country, the deep state in this country, likes to still subsidize the whole system. And you know, by doing that, you are condoning, for example, the fact that China is the biggest polluter. Oh, well, they are a developing country.
Yeah,
like absolutely. India. So they have to be left alone, while instead Europe has been subject to a different kind of situation, because Europe is perceived as a modern country, as a country that a modern continent that is and of course they have to now implement the green new laws that prohibit this and that, and by 2030 whatever they offer no more fossil fuels. They are embracing all this bullshit, but Europe can't afford it.
Right.
And actually, even the United States can't afford it. But in fact, we are more realistic because we have at least part of the country which is opposing this whole thing. By embracing this green economy, you are basically giving China all the options at the moment. They have the rare earth. They have the electric cars. They can build your solar panels. You are giving yourself a chance. So I am just asking once again the people who are viewing us from Canada, saying, Canada, yeah, resist, we're independent, all this bullshit. Okay. Stay independent. Stay independent after a few years of Justin Trudeau, the illegitimate son of Fidel Castro, which treated you like a communist hellhole. And the results were pretty clear, because during the pandemic, there were people trying to revolt and to, all those truck drivers. I mean, Canada actually for a moment seemed like they wanted to do something. Now, oh no, Trump wants to take us over. We need to defend Canada. Okay, Canada, keep your Canada and move to China, because China is going to come to you soon, and that's your future. Greenland, same thing. Europe, same thing. Africa, whatever country you're in, there is an alternative. Either is America or either is China. You decide what kind of future you want for your kids. Do you want to have a future which is like this, or you want to have a future which is basically a future built on 1776 and the values of the American founding fathers, which built the perfect constitution which no other country has on the earth? So with the system of check and balances, at the moment we're seeing what is happening. They're trying to still, in a way, stop Trump from doing many things. This, of course, within a system which is still, though, very much a democracy. So, if one thing can be said here, if a judge is left wing or if a judge is right wing. If you go in Europe, you don't know what is the judge you have in front. It's always a left wing. But they are, they present themselves and say, we judges in countries like Italy, we are not politicized. Then they make, then the actual scandals in the last few years have proven otherwise, and we have discovered that basically there's a whole current of left-wing politicized magistrates, judges, and so on. So it's like, it's better to live in reality than live in a fiction world. In South Africa, they are racist against white people. And this is the reaction that South Africa has because of apartheid. But to actually go all the way and persecute the white man, well, South Africa is digging their own grave. Of course, the future of South Africa can be guaranteed by China. And so China is probably going to come into South Africa and get the whole country. That's it.
Yeah, well, China's already here. I'll tell you, everyone's been fighting over Africa, and especially South Africa. The Russians, the Chinese, the US, all of them. I mean, for a country, exactly, it'll be a repeat of Rhodesia. I was about to say Zimbabwe with Robert Mugabe, and unfortunately, that's the sad truth. When you look at when you're looking at Africa, and let's say South Africa specifically, which is obviously the most modernized country in Africa, we've been used as guinea pigs.
One thing, I don't know if you can understand this, or you can, in the sense, not understand it, but you can cultivate this idea. I think that in the future, each country should be independent culturally, but in regards to their military and political stand, there is not going to be an independence anymore. Technology, the way it's projecting itself to 2030, and as you know, I have written books about it, means, and Bill Gates has just said yesterday or the day before, that has confirmed that within the next 5 years, everything is going to change. That means that, do you want the AI to be your God from China or from America? Now, the difference in the programming will be lethal for you. And so I suggest for all those countries who I wish I could. I mean, I'm unfortunately only a modest writer in this situation. Somebody who, like you, Chantelle, can just bring out our opinions. Unfortunately, we have no say in the political discourse. But having said that, my advice will be for every country in the world to decide where they want to stand, because this world is being divided in 3 blocks. Maximum. It's like Orwell 1984. What are you gonna be? What kind of block you want to belong to? So and that's it. And it's not going to be like eluding, the independence of South Africa, or the independence of Great Britain, or the independence of Portugal, or the independence of, I don't know, Paraguay or Argentina. No, there is not going to be an independence. So it's either BRICS.
I think there's such an argument on both sides for that, because I'm going to tell you, as someone who's a South African and has literally witnessed firsthand how our own apartheid government raped us, right, time and time again, how we've constantly been raped by the US government in the ruse of coming here to bring peace and solidarity and create peace amongst our absolute savage people who have no idea how to control themselves, right? Mm-hmm. That's the idea that everyone has of Africa. And I can tell you, it is such bullshit.
But here it's not about Africa, Chantelle. We said even the countries in. I'm saying about being part of spheres of influence and deciding.
But hear me. I just want to say this.
To what you're saying, and of course I agree that wrong things have been done in South Africa and also in other countries. Is to understand, do you want to be Chinese or do you want to be America, Chantelle?
Listen.
There is no listen. There is a choice.
No, there is a listen.
There is China or America. The rest is just
there is definitely a listen. There's definitely a listen. You know, when you've lived in a third world country like this, and you know your country, your continent is sitting on the biggest wealth of this entire planet, just about, and we are raped, we are abused, we are in the most obscene ways. You must see how these mining companies come here. They will mine our resources. They leave. Hang on, no, let me finish, because there's a reason I'm saying this. They leave holes in the ground a half a kilometer long. They just leave it wide open. Do you know how many people fall down there? Do you know how many murders, deaths, whatever? Hang on. I'm saying this continent has been treated like nothing by the West for the longest time. And why? Because our resources are used and stolen. And the US, I'm not saying the American people, I'm not saying Trump, I'm saying the US government has been a huge perpetrator of those crimes against this continent. So now, when the African people don't trust the American government, don't blame them. There's a lot of trust. Trust is something that has to be rebuilt. Show us how we can trust you again. Show us how we can trust you.
We have a comment here on the chat. It says, we don't want Chinese or America. And I repeat, the concept is not about what you want, but it's about what is being created and the technology that is being implemented. So I agree completely with you, Chantelle, about what has happened in the past. And that's why I also think that actually abandoning US aid from Donald Trump, eliminating US aid, is because that so-called soft power wasn't soft at all, like you said, in what you just said. But here we have to be realistic. So I'm just telling you, do you want your AI from China or from America? And there is no alternatives, because I repeat, we are in a prison planet in which you're going to have to make a choice. So what is your choice?
Neither.
No, and that's the problem here. You
see, neither. I choose to have a sovereign Africa. I choose sovereignty.
I repeat. This is a little planet.
I hear you, Leo. I hear you.
In 5 years, the AI will reach a power which is unimaginable. And you're not going to have a say, because there is already a net of satellites in this prison planet that doesn't make it possible for you to stay independent even when you go to the toilet. So I repeat it once again. The people who say, I choose my country, Scotland, or I choose this, I repeat, guys, this is not about your sovereign identity, culturally speaking, which I hope you will always maintain wherever you are and whatever latitude you are in the planet. I'm talking about the fact that this whole planet is about to be divided by the AI into 2 blocks. And you're going to have to choose which block you want to be in. And so
I
at
do
that
agree.
point, it's not about what you want, but the reality of it all. So that's why at that, when I see the comments here on the chat, I am laughing to myself.
No, look, I love these conversations. They are so necessary to have. This is why I love our chats as well, because you're going to see
that everything, also the spiritual and this and that. Remember, guys, that on top of all this new world order, there is people who have also knowledge about spiritual warfare, the Jesuits in premise, because those people have been around for a very long time and have knowledge that you can't even imagine. That's why the Jesuits are also in charge of the astronomical sector and the observing the alien phenomena, which is something which is also lurking behind all this. So I repeat, do you want to face the future with America or with China? Because there is no other alternatives. They're gonna come knocking at your door after 2030, and they're gonna tell you, you want to be microchipped by China or America? What you will choose? Just I'm making an example here, and I'm telling you, I'm against microchipping, and I said I will never be microchipping in my life. But I'm telling you, what is your answer? Because your answer, if your answer is, of course, I will stay independent, I will go into the bush, I will go there where nobody can find me, I will tell you, they will find you, because this planet is now a prison planet, and it's been the net of all the satellites.
It's always been a prison planet, Leo.
No. The amount of satellites that we have around this planet today was never prior to this. I'm talking about the reality. I'm not talking about this always been. No, it's been now. We have a construction of thousands of satellites, AI monitoring you every step of the way. So the thing is this: do you want to live the Chinese way, which is all for the state and controlled in everything you do? So you have a Chinese, the credit score system. If you don't behave well, you can't take a plane and all that. That is what is going to happen if you embrace the Chinese modality. It's going to be simply let me be very practical. It's going to be like a thing. You have 2 switches: China modality, US modality. Which one is the one you want to press? And if you say, I'm going to press either of them and I'm going to live in my own brain, they're going to tell you, okay, fine, live in your own brain. But also, when it comes down to being independent, spiritual and everything, let's not forget, guys, that we are about to encounter the quantum reality, the quantum computer reality, which I have outlined, as you know, in volume 9 of my Confessions. They will enter your brain in one way or another. So,
and you know what, Gene, I agree with you, and that is my comment to everything.
Absolutely.
This is, you talk about the prison planet, and I agree. It's like when we're looking at the movie type The Matrix thing.
Of course, I'm talking about the physical chemical construction of it, the physical entity of it, spiritually, we still fortunately have our independence and our loyalty to God. But that's where the Christian element comes in. That's where the mark of the beast comes in. You see, the mark of the beast, it's near. And the moment in which you choose not to embrace that mark of the beast, well, you're going to have to go off the grid. You're going to have to fight your own war against the system. And I'm sure there is going to be people that are going to be able to fight it. So that's a possibility. But of course, it's more easy to fight that kind of war when you have weapons. And here in America, we have those weapons. So that is
Look,
something.
I agree. The world is definitely, we're at such a crucial time right now. And I fully agree. It's a prison planet, and it has been for a long time. It's not like suddenly we've been taken prisoner. We've actually been a prison planet for a long time when we start waking up and seeing what's been happening around us, right? So it really is. Nothing happened to my, it's my birthmark. I have a birthmark. I'm not a member of the Black Eye Club, by the way. So yeah, I get asked that question every so often. So yeah, but I really think that's why I love having these types of conversations, honestly, because I love the fact that we can talk about these things. We can get a little bit sassy with each other and a little bit feisty, and really just because this is how we find our solutions, you know. At the end of the day, yes, you are so right. And that's the cold hard truth, Leo. Those are our two choices right now. That is where we're at. Those are our two choices. So what are you going to do?
When people tell me the spiritual controls the physical, like I don't know these kind of things, guys. I mean, I come from a tradition that knows exactly what the thought form is, the egregor. To become a 33-degree Freemason or to have the initiation in all the secret societies that I have been participant in my time in the New World order structure. I mean, you have to have a lot of knowledge and you have to study a lot. So I understand completely what it means, also the other side of things. And unfortunately, I know, though, that the demonic side is behind it all. Because if we are having the Chinese prevailing in a confrontation, is because they are the dragon of the apocalypse, but because also the apocalypse, but they have also the knowledge. You know, I mean, when a Chinese has the knowledge of the Qi energy, or you know, when they do Qigong, for example, you know, and they say, you know, you can put together this energy and you can literally bring it, and then, you know, this energy can be thrown against the enemy. I mean, these people have knowledge of alchemy that is as ancient as ancient Egypt.
Yeah, that's the life force energy. They really have understood the chi. They've understood the chi. And you see, when you're looking, everything is duality. So when you're looking, the dark side of China is what we're really seeing now. But then the duality is that absolute ability to understand how to do that. And you know how they mastered that, Leo? Through no other way than using their breath. The one thing that we all have, that God has given us, that links us. You see, what the Chinese have understood is that by using your breath in a certain way, advanced yoga breathing, for example, which is one of the reasons that yoga is so demonized, by the way, because they don't want you knowing this information, is that
listen, within the Illuminati, techniques like Hatha Yoga and stuff have been experimented first. I mean, the first people who experimented, let's not forget that the people who brought these techniques to Europe before everybody else were the Illuminati, and that's why, and groups like the Theosophical Society that sprang out of it. So we have to be very careful, though. The Jesuits themselves, so they were the first ones to go to Asia. They were the first ones to go to China, India, and all these places.
Those were that was the Nazis going there to find the Vrol energy.
Much earlier than the Nazis were actually the Jesuits. In fact, Himmler based his whole structure on the Jesuits. So you have here an element, you know, the Jesuits are the ones that went after that kind of knowledge before anybody else.
But they went there. They found it from the masters, the Himalayan masters, right? Who in their mind were the keepers of the Vrol, which they weren't. They weren't the keepers of the Vrol. The Vrol is the dark side of that force. Okay, the Himalayan masters understood that by using your breath in a certain advanced yogic, which is why the yogic techniques have been demonized, okay, you have the ability to link to the chi, the life force, and then with your breath.
The problem has always been that people have made the wrong use of these techniques, and of course, at that point, these techniques can be used.
Well, exactly. It's how you use it. You see, it's your prana, your chi, your life force. So with your breath, you link to the life force, which then takes you to a space of blissfulness, which enables you to link to the divine, God the Most High. You see, they use that highway to hell. That's what they use. They use that virile energy is that force that they use for the negative, which is
you today go through all these new age realities.
Nothing new age about that. There's nothing new.
No, I'm saying all these new age realities of various gurus who are claiming to have this or this other yoga technique or implement.
No, it's got nothing to do with the yoga. Yoga is all about your breath. It's all about your breath.
All about how you the way that it was brought into the West, it was actually a rather materialistic way, and so in the end, it kind of like focused more on the matter than on the essence of it. That's the problem. We have, of course, reached our 90 minutes deadline. It was a great chat. Like we said, at the end of the month, I hope I will be able to already introduce you my new book that will definitely be introduced to our audience also in a special book club, which is a new initiative which starts in May. And of course, like you said, it's always a great opportunity. So to be here, so we can chat and bring together, this knowledge. Maybe in this, let's say, intellectual confrontations, we are also managing at time to establish some great truths. And I see that the chat is on fire, if you want to say it like this, filled with the people.
I love it. And you know what I love about our chats here with you is that it's like with all the viewer, the guests we have, there's always, you get the core people, right? And then you definitely get the others coming in. It's a super intelligent group of people that I love in these chats, and they're always coming in with different angles and different ideas, and I love that. And that is why I really look forward.
I like very much the fact they don't stop at the appearances. They actually want to dwell much deeper. And so when we bring up all kinds of topics, they're always very much analyzing them with an open mind and with a sense of awareness, which unfortunately misses from the majority of people today. And the majority of people today, like we mentioned very much this topic of Prison Planet today, unfortunately, it's willingly in the cave, Plato's cave. It's an example of it. They are willingly in that cave. They don't really want to be brought out of that cave because that cave is made of certainties. Maybe their sport, their football, their soccer, their whatever, their little things that they can grab from maybe a TV series or a movie or even a book. It doesn't always lead to awareness, and instead, with your show, we have really raised, I think, a little bit the awareness of people. So thank you very much for tuning in. We see you again. I personally will see you at the end of April and after Easter. So have a great Easter in Italy. We all enjoy this great cake, which you could all taste, which is called
Colomba. Is that panettone? Is that your panettone? I love panettone.
No, panettone is for Christmas. This is actually called Colomba. It's more or less the same. It's basically the same. It's just changing the shape. The Russians actually have adopted panettone for Easter, but that's because simply the Italians who were selling the panettone just sell them the leftovers, and they were so used to it that they made it the cake of the Easter, with the leftovers from the Italian. The Italians said, okay, let's send all the panettones left over from Christmas to Russia. But Colomba is more or less like panettone. Actually, it's a great cake. It's a great cake. So have a great time. Easter time is the time of resurrection. It's the time that we actually, especially within the Christian tradition, because of course we have also the Jewish tradition, and that is another form of Easter. But that's very interesting, because recently there's a lot of talk about also this document from the CIA talking about the Ark of the Covenant and all that. But at the same time, we are talking about death and resurrection. We are talking about Jesus sacrificing himself and on the cross, which is very symbolic, filled, of course, with symbolism. And it's a time of the year in which we should all be close to our families and to our friends and cherish those moments. So happy Easter, everybody, and take care. God bless you.
Thank you, Leo. It's been wonderful having you as usual. And I so look forward to our book clubs. We're going to be hearing more just exactly when in May. And then that is going to be for members and Patreons. God's Bumblebee Hank, I love your name. Thank you for being our new member tonight. Really, really appreciate you. And guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you all tuning in. And for those of us I see there's a couple of us in the chats that are on the fast as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, much love and respect to you all. So take good care, everybody, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time. And God bless Easter, I was going to say. God bless Leo. Happy Easter. Thank you. Until we'll see you again then. Yay. Take care, everybody. See you very soon. Panettone. I'm going to be eating panettone. And I'm fasting. Yeah. That is so cruel.
I have one with, the panettone, you have the raisins, all those things, you have one with, I just finished my one with the raisins, and now I'm having the one without. So,
I'm having the one with raisins. I like raisins.
Yeah, they're good. But also the one without, it's good. It depends, variety. Take care, guys.